The Great Pyramid, supreme among the wonders of antiquity and unequaled by the achievements of subsequent architects and builders, the Great Pyramid of Giza bears mute witness to an unknown civilization that, having endured its predestined span, passed into the dim oblivion of prehistoric times. Who were the illuminated mathematicians who planned its parts and dimensions, the master craftsman who supervised its construction, the cunning workman who trued its stones? Eloquent in its silence, inspirational in its majesty, divine in its simplicity, the Great Pyramid is indeed a sermon in stone. Its awesomeness beggars description, its magnitude overwhelms the puny sensibilities of man, and among the shifting sands of time it stands as a fitting emblem of eternity itself. The Great Pyramid is the unsolved riddle of the ages. Years have been devoted by eminent scholars to the study of its many marvels. But no matter how profound these intellects have been, the pyramid has proved itself to be still more profound. One learned Egyptologist, after devoting the best years of his life to its study, declared that a complete understanding of the pyramid's true purpose would require perfect knowledge of not only every art and science now known to mankind, but also many others of which present humanity is unaware. Our race is turned to the goal of objective attainment. It is conquering the visible, tangible universe which surrounds it and of which it is a part. It is flying through the air and sailing under the sea. It is exploding electrons and projecting magnificent units of electrical energy through the invisible vistas of space. It is manufacturing guns that will hurl tons of metal many miles. It is reaching out into the unknown elements of nature in search of destructive forces which, if discovered, will jeopardize the destiny of the planet itself. Yet all this knowledge man is hopelessly ignorant of himself. He is ignorant of the causes which brought him into being, the reason why he is a manifesting creature, and the ultimate towards which he is being swept with irresistible force. Whereas we explore the visible, antiquity explored Whereas we explored the visible, antiquity explored the invisible. Whereas we construct machines to do our labor, they called upon the elements and with the power possessed by primitive peoples controlled the air, the earth, the fire, and the water and made servants out of the winds. What is more, they accomplished all this without following the circuitous route by which modern civilization seeks to attain the same end. We declare the Great Pyramid of Giza to be the imperishable monument of ancient achievement, a divine legacy from the unknown past, constructed at the cost of infinite labor and infinite patience, that all posterity may know the will of the gods and the path of attainment. In its measurements, man may read, as in a book, that secret doctrine which the first civilizations of antiquity bequeathed to their heirs, successors, and assigns. In view of the numerous eminent authorities who have written concerning the physical dimensions and composition of the Great Pyramid, it does not seem advisable to spend much time on ground already so thoroughly covered. We will therefore merely touch on a few highlights of its construction and then pass on to a consideration of its philosophical significance. While not the tallest of structures, the Great Pyramid is undoubtedly the largest building in the world. It has a ground area of a trifle less than 13 acres, covers nearly 3 times as much space as the Vatican at Rome, and is over 150 feet higher than St. Paul's Cathedral. The baseline of each of its sides is over 750 feet in length, and its vertical height is about 482 feet. The weight of the Great Pyramid is estimated to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,273,834 tons, while the weight of the Earth is estimated at a lot of zeros, 5273 with a lot of zeros, pyramid tons. It is noteworthy that the first 4 figures in each calculation are the same. The age of the Great Pyramid has been the subject of much speculation and dispute. Up to recent years, it would have been stark heresy to declare a building to be more than 7,000 years old at the utmost, because science, controlled by theology, dared not disagree with the orthodox findings of bigoted theological historians. But as that day has passed and estimates now place the age of the Earth at over 300 million years, it is possible to approach much closer to the probable facts that it was in the last century. The prevalent idea that the Great Pyramid was built a few thousand years BC is controverted by all the evidence at hand. Not necessarily. Distinct marks of erosion are now to be seen high up on the sides of the Great Pyramid, which to some authorities is proof that in the infinite past, the waves of a great sea nearly 300 feet in depth broke against its ancient walls. There is no record of any such flood in historic times. Even biblical historians are prone to admit that the Great Pyramid was erected before the flood and that it was the deluge of Noah that left the erosion marks upon its walls. The Great Pyramid is at least 25,000 years old, some say. It is much more likely to be from 60,000 to 100,000 years old. It stood long before the Egyptians established their post-Atlantean empire. It was the house of God. One scientist, after estimating with great care the intricacies of its construction, bowed his head and said, "None but God himself could have built it. It was not the work of man." We affirm that man, however, did build it, but we declare it was not the man that modern science advances as representative of the human race 100,000 years ago. It was no Pithecanthropus, Piltdown, or Neanderthal man with brain capacity but little in advance of the anthropod who trued its stones or calculated its relationship to the motion of the heavenly bodies. No stone hatchet man worked out its mathematical equations. No cave dweller mixed its indestructible mortar. Its achievements were the achievements of a race of supermen excelling in pursuits of which modern civilization is comparatively ignorant. It is possible that somewhere in the dim past this earth was peopled by a mighty race as resplendent in scientific achievement as it was profound in philosophic precept. A myopic science will most likely answer absurd, impossible, yet the facts remain that the builders of the Great Pyramid were well acquainted with both the mysteries of the universal dynamics and the nature of the human soul. All the wisdom possessed by the ancients seems to have been epitomized in the structure of the Great Pyramid, and he who solves its riddle must necessarily be as wise as he who contrived it. The Great Pyramid is the perfect emblem of divinity, the absolute symbol of humanity, the complete type of nature, and the image of time, eternity, and existence. In one simple geometrical figure constructed according to an eternal principle is set forth the secret of all things, all processes, all laws, and all truth. Using the pyramid measurements as a basis, Mr. William Petrie computed the distance of the sun from the earth as 91,840,000,000 miles, which was about 3.5 million miles less than the accepted mean distance. Several years later, the distance was recalculated by an international gathering of astronomers who estimated the true mean distance to be 91,500,000 miles. In all probability, the Great Pyramid measurement is more accurate than even these later findings. It is therefore evident that the men who built the Great Pyramid were not only astronomers, but that their skill in computing celestial distances was at least equal to our own. While it is undoubtedly true that many of the pyramids were used as tombs, it is quite certain that the Great Pyramid of Giza was never intended as a sepulchral vault. No mummified body was ever found in it, and the sarcophagus in the king's chamber is suspected of having been constructed for any one of a dozen purposes ranging from a baptismal font to a grain bin. Leaving the materialist to flounder in the midst of incalculable sums and endless contradictions, let us examine the form and composition of the Great Pyramid in the light of the Egyptian esotericism, the secret doctrine of the priests. The Great Pyramid's... hold on. Excuse me. The Great Pyramid stands with its four faces to the four cardinal angles. The entrance part way up the side is in the north and so cleverly concealed that it is practically invisible from below. The entrance consists of a square surmounted by a triangle, thus signifying that the earth is surmounted by spirit. The entrance is hidden to signify that the way of light is difficult to find, and narrow is the gate that leads to eternal life, and none may enter except he bow his head to the inevitable. The square base of the pyramid in the mystery signifies its sure foundation upon the earth, for nature is the base upon which must be raised the divine house. The structure of wisdom must have a solid foundation in the laws of nature. As the word pyramid signifies light and fire, it is a material edifice built in the symbolic form of a flame with its point upward. This point may be considered as an indicator that wisdom is above and ignorance is below. The square base further represents the four elements and the sides of the four spirits which guard the angles of the world. Among the ancient Egyptians, the triangle or pyramid was symbolic of immortality, for it was a point rising out of a square, thus signifying the resurrection of spirit out of matter, the one out of the four. The 5 points are the number of the priest and also the secret Pythagorean emblem of man. The 5 is the initiator, the dragon slayer, he who attains to self by the destruction of the not-self. The substantiation of our belief that the Great Pyramid was the sacred house of the mysteries, we quote from the eminent authority on Masonic symbolism, Albert Churchward. We contend that the Great Pyramid of Giza was built in Egypt as a monument and lasting memorial of this early religion on true scientific laws by divine inspiration and knowledge of the laws of the universe. Indeed, we may look on the Great Pyramid as the first true Masonic temple in the world, surpassing all others that have ever been built. This thought opens up a great field of speculation. Was the Great Pyramid the true house of Solomon? Was the architect of that house the immortal Hiram Abiff, whose name means our father Charam, or the creative fire? Were the stones of the Great Pyramid cut by bronze saws with teeth made of diamonds, or were they cut by means of cosmic fire, or the skimmer with which Moses cut the jewels for the breastplate of the high priest? What was the skimmer? The sacred stone which disintegrated anything it touched. Was it the great magical agent of the universe focused upon a point prepared according to the secrets of the mysteries? We favor the idea that the Great Pyramid was the real Solomon's Temple. We know the allegory has been sadly distorted, and while to the modern Mason it may seem incredible that the Great Pyramid could be the birthplace of his craft, we would ask him to answer 2 questions. What building greater than the pyramid has any architect or any craftsman executed upon the face of the earth? For the administration of the 3 degrees of Blue Lodge Masonry, what structure more fitting than the Great Pyramid could be found, with its 3 appropriate chambers and a sarcophagus ready at hand in the King's Chamber for the giving of the Master Mason's degree? Egypt has always been regarded as the land of mystery. She surpassed all other nations in her knowledge, all architectonics, chemistry, and astronomy. She is looked upon as being the cradle of science and philosophy, and while we know comparatively little concerning the exact nature of Egyptian culture, we are continually confronted by evidence of its superiority. In fact, we know a great deal less about Egypt than we care to admit, and being fundamentally materialistic, most Egyptologists have given little consideration to the religious equation, the supreme element in the history of civilization of all ancient nations. In spite of all evidence to the contrary, we shall yet discover that the Rosetta Stone is not the key to the Egyptian hieroglyphics. We shall yet realize that the true meaning of the Egyptian ideographs has never been revealed. We are totally ignorant of the knowledge possessed by the better minds of the ancient Egyptian world for a very simple reason. The Egyptians, like all other enlightened races, divided their knowledge into 2 parts, exoteric and esoteric. The exoteric was that portion of learning revealed to the many, and the esoteric, that part reserved for the illumined few and never reduced to writing, save in the form of hieroglyphics and symbols which were meaningless without the key, which was the treasured possession of the initiated priestcraft. The Egyptian culture with which we are conversant is only the exoteric part revealed to the uneducated multitudes of the ancient empire. That finer culture, the real wisdom of the Egyptians, was preserved for the elect, and our world is far too gross and materialistic to comprehend the subtleties of Egyptian esotericism. Therefore, we grope blindly amidst images and emblems which we, finding no meaning for them, pronounce meaningless. According to the secret teachings, the Great Pyramid was the tomb of Osiris, the black god of the Nile. Osiris represents a certain phase of solar energy, and therefore his house or tomb is emblematic of the universe within which he is entombed and upon the cross of which he is crucified. Hold on. Let me see. Just one more page. Thus, the Great Pyramid is not a lighthouse, an observatory, or a tomb, but a temple. W. Marsham Adams calls it the house of the hidden places, and such indeed it was, for it represented the inner sanctuary of the Egyptian wisdom, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say pre-Egyptian wisdom. Hermes was the Egyptian god of wisdom and letters, the divine illuminator, worshipped through the planet Mercury, and ancient references to the effect that the pyramid was the house of Hermes emphasize anew the fact that it was in reality the supreme temple of the invisible and supreme deity. In all probability, the Great Pyramid was the first temple of the mysteries, the first structure erected as a repository for those secret truths which are the certain foundation of all modern arts and sciences. The Great Pyramid, says the secret book, is the perfect emblem of the microcosm, or man, and the microcosm is the inversion of the macrocosm. The macrocosm is the universe without, consisting of unnumbered stars and planets encircled by the mighty egg of cosmic space. All that is in the macrocosm is to be found in miniature in the microcosm. As man is the image of God, so the Great Pyramid is the image of the universe. And what is more, it is scientifically correct as an image of the universe. Excuse me. Many authors have treated of the physical marvels of the Great Pyramid, but the modern world is still so ignorant of ancient superphysics that it fails to grasp the subtle import of primitive symbolism in religion. We know that such structures as the Great Pyramid, the Cretan Labyrinth, and the Delphian Oracle were erected to conceal and yet perpetuate certain definite scientific and philosophic theorems. The policy of the ancient world was concealment. Knowledge was never revealed except through parables and allegories. Facts were never directly expressed, they were hinted at. Planets were personified as gods and goddesses. The sun was a shining-faced man with flowing golden locks, and the earth was the great mother, her true nature concealed under veils and robes that only the illumined might remove. Elements were personified. The universe was an egg. Force was a dragon. Wisdom was a serpent. Evil was a grotesque image, part crocodile, part hog. The absolute was a globe. The threefold creative power was a triangle, and the fourfold universe of material substance was a square, or, again, spirit was a point, manifestation was a line, intelligence was a surface, and substance was a solid. Thus, it is evident that symbolism was the universal language of the ancients. We may laugh at their curious myths and accuse them of idolatry and ignorance, but we are the ones that are ignorant and superficial when we assume that the great minds of antiquity, the founders of the arts and sciences, and the patrons of learning were ignorant of the true state and nature of divinity and humanity. Somewhere in the dim, forgotten ages, primitive man, still responsive to the whole subtle influences of nature and still without the separating power of individual thought, carved in stone or preserved as tradition and legend certain rudimentary knowledge. He may have secured this knowledge by a process of natural receptivity or from some previous race that inhabited this earth before the coming of present humanity. After the lapse of ages, this unknown people became the fabled gods who walked the earth and talked with man in the first days of his existence. Many of the Platonists believed that existence was eternal, that the universe had never been constructed and would never be dissolved, that the worlds had always been, and that over the face of them swept periodic waves of force and power. While modern science refutes the theory and produces evidence that universes come into being and go out of existence, still the world is very old and humanity is very young. No one knows who our progenitors were. It may be true that man rose up from the muck and mire of a prehistoric fins, that first he appeared as mosses and lichens, leaving no record of the molten surface of the that first he appeared as mosses and lichens, leaving no record of the molten surface of the Azoic rocks. But the true origin of life is spiritual, not physical, and it is also quite certain that side by side with the growing forms of men and beasts, there has advanced a mysterious and secret culture whose outward expression we recognize as religion, philosophy, science, and ethics, and in its innermost sense as knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Man has never been without knowledge of his origin and the purpose of his existence. Those divine powers who regulate the destiny of creation, whose manifest works bear witness to their reality, but whose form no man has seen, have always had their covenant with men. They have always been represented among humanity by certain sages and prophets. The temples were the houses of the gods, dedicated to their worship, protected from all desecration, and cleansed of all evil, that to these sanctified areas in the midst of a world of sin and strife, the gods might come and there deliver to their tribes, nations, and races those laws and mandates necessary to human survival. While the world has made rapid progress in scientific lines, it can claim but little religious growth in thousands of years. We are still unstrung by the battles of sectarianism. We are still pushed and pulled by contending theological factions, and as the supreme proof of our spiritual ignorance, we still have a number of contradictory schools of religious thought. In other words, our little backyard would harbor scores of little backyard creeds. It therefore has no true religion, for it is quite evident that divinity is a unity and therefore can only be worshipped in unity and not in diversity. While it is undoubtedly necessary that there be numerous forms of religion adapted to racial limitations, national attitudes, and geographical environments, still, it is equally true that those religions must comprehend their own fundamental unity and realize that their differences are not in essentiality, but in triviality. One more. While the ignorant masses worshipped at the altars of this god or that god, the wise men of antiquity were not fettered by religious prejudice, but recognized in these hosts of divinities the personified emanations and attributes of one supreme Father. Accordingly, the Greeks went forth in search of wisdom, and their quest led them into the temples of every faith and doctrine of the world. Did the religion of the Greek philosopher limit him to Zeus, Rhea, Hermes, or the numerous other deities whose marble images sat in the magnificent temples rising on the brow of the Acropolis? Assuredly not. All right.